People believe that behind the walls of a family home in the quiet town of Cedarville, no one would have imagined what was going on. People believe that the respected businessman David seemed to have it all: a beautiful wife, a happy family, and an apparently perfect life. But beneath the surface, something dark and forbidden began to brew. His affair with Evan, his 21-year-old stepson, would soon get out of control and start revealing a twisted betrayal no one would ever see coming. How far would a person go when their deepest desires come to light? David Walters appeared to live the perfect life: successful businessman, loving husband to Marissa, and part of a seemingly ideal blended family. After Marissa's first marriage ended, David became her rock, and together they built a life that looked like the all-American dream to everyone in Cedarville. Marissa's 21-year-old son Evan had just returned from college, bringing new energy to their home. On the surface, his presence seemed to complete their picture-perfect family. David, already a devoted stepfather, embraced the role, and together they appeared happy and seamless to everyone around them. David often lingered with Evan after Marissa went to bed, their late-night talks becoming a routine. Their talks initially sounded harmless, but there was something much deeper brewing beneath the surface. Evan had filled a hole in David's life, tugging him in with a pull that David couldn't even help but succumb to. When the intensity of closeness rose to such a level, it went well beyond mere conversation. For David, he could see there was indeed great chemistry between him and Evan, something that had stirred something he hadn't felt in years. Evan was carefree, reminding David of all he had lost, which made his responsibilities a lot heavier. Though he knew it wasn't right, he couldn't resist. David and Evan didn't really start out anything special in their relationship. Initially, it was all just casual discussions, those mundane stepdad-stepson moments where David tried to offer his advice, share his life stories, and establish a connection. Evan, having just come out of college, was candid and eager to discuss everything that had to do with the future, his job search, and all such possibilities. There was something refreshing about Evan's energy, something innocent at first. Yet, as months turned into seasons, and as the seasons turned into years, what had originally been a harmless conversation became something much more intense, much more dangerous. He had, for the most part, always been a composed man, but something about Evan would stir feelings he hadn't experienced in years. Feelings he didn't expect, and certainly didn't want. At first, he wrote it off as mere admiration. Evan reminded him of his own young self, full of life, carefree, uninhibited by the weight of responsibilities. But slow and harmless thoughts began to change. Now, no longer a mere admiration, but an intense, burning desire. Something darker, more primal had taken over David, which he knew he could no longer stop. Each time he saw Evan, he felt it, a draw, a craving he couldn't shake from his mind. At night, after Marissa had gone to bed, David kept drifting toward the living room where Evan spent his night. Sometimes Evan read, other times he just sat there watching television, but those moments became their little world. The house would be so quiet when the lights were dimmed down, and their conversation slipped into more intimate personal territory as they related about life, regrets, and the dreams he gave up on. Slowly, David was to become dependent on those discussions in order to crave that time alone with Evan. He convinced himself it was innocent, that there was nothing wrong with two men bonding like that. David's internal struggle was relentless. His desire for Evan had become the controlling factor in his existence, a thing he couldn't control no matter how hard he tried. He was starving for those touches, those brief moments of connection. Every time their hands coincided, the spark went all through him, and he felt something inside him stir to life. As much as he tried to suppress it, reminding himself of the lines he was crossing, it was becoming increasingly hard to refute. That boundary separating a father from a stepson was blurring, and David knew it. Glances lingered too long, touches seemed innocent but electric. Before they knew it, the line was crossed. That one night on the back porch when their hands touched was the moment of change. The emotional attachment took physical form, and it was like a dam that had collapsed and the water let loose. David, who at least tried to run away from his attraction towards Evan earlier, was now totally glued. His inner battle had now turned into an all-encompassing obsession. Every passing minute without Evan was tormenting him. He couldn't stop thinking about Evan, repeating all the secret moments they shared together, his body aching for more of that. And slowly, he couldn't focus on anything else anymore. With the result, it rather started reflecting in his life. David started to be very reckless, living off his new passion, willing to risk everything just to be with Evan. Not much time went by before David began taking bolder and more dangerous steps to keep up with their affair. He was having his way with Evan, sneaking into the bedroom after Marissa fell asleep. That wasn't enough now. His obsession eventually captured every molecule of his being. His work was falling apart. He couldn't attend significant meetings and would overlook emails and put off phone calls. Nothing mattered except Evan. Even his health interest became a problem. He started faking illnesses just so he could rush home and see him. Meanwhile, Evan enjoyed the attention but didn't feel the same intensity. For him, it was a thrill, a secret excitement, but nothing more. He still had a life outside the house, going out with friends and dating girls his own age. This drove David mad with jealousy. Every time Evan left the house, David's mind raced with paranoid thoughts. Was Evan seeing someone else? The idea of Evan being with someone else consumed David, making him irrational and desperate. David's obsession intensified as he began checking Evan's phone and even followed him to a bar in desperation. His jealousy consumed him, leading to erratic behavior. At dinner, he would snap at Evan without reason, while Marissa grew puzzled by David's hostility. He was spiraling, desperate to keep Evan close. As David's obsession grew, Evan began to pull away, realizing the danger of their affair. David's increasing possessiveness suffocated him, leading Evan to avoid their late-night talks and spend more time away. David's jealousy spiraled and his desperation only intensified, turning their relationship into a ticking time bomb. Marissa's heart sank as she scrolled through David's phone, her worst fears confirmed. The messages between David and Evan were subtle, but the tone was unmistakable. Shock turned into disbelief, and disbelief quickly morphed into pure rage. Her husband, the man she trusted for years, had betrayed her in the worst possible way. And Evan, her son, was part of this twisted affair. Marissa's hand shook as the reality of it all hit her. Her world, her family, everything she thought she knew was crumbling. David lay on the floor, his breath shallow, the blood seeping through his fingers as he pressed them to the wound. His eyes met Evan's, filled with desperation, pleading silently for help. "Don't leave me," he rasped, barely able to get the words out. But Evan stood frozen, his heart pounding, torn between the urge to save David and the overwhelming need to escape. The nightmare had consumed them both, but for Evan, this felt like his only way out. Slowly, he turned and walked away, leaving David behind, watching as his life drained away with each fading breath. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.